Hello and welcome back, adventurers. This is Captain TTRPG, and today we're talking about Starfinder 2nd Edition. Welcome back, adventurers. Today we are going to rank the subclasses for the Witchwarper. I will only be ranking the paradoxes, however, not the anchors, even though both you could say are parts of your subclass. I just don't think the anchors offer enough to really deserve being ranked, if I can be honest with you. But let me know what you think if you really want to hear about them. Maybe I'll do at least a short about them or something. Before jumping into the rankings, I'll show you my criteria for ranking subclasses. It hasn't changed, but if anybody hasn't watched one of these videos before, I want to make sure that you understand how I rank them. On screen here, you can see my criteria. I will be ranking subclasses from S to D. An S subclass is a subclass that is clearly mechanically stronger for combat than other subclasses, while not falling behind in other pillars of play that naturally fit the class well. Basically, this is a subclass that becomes the default way to play, or the way to play the class right. I largely believe both Pathfinder and Starfinder2e avoid this, but sometimes something does land here. An A subclass is one that is strong in combat in any adventure. It's not only strong on its own, but it makes the team stronger, because again, this is a cooperative, team-based game. And it takes advantage of whatever the class is really good at. Also, it shouldn't fall behind in other pillars of play, any more so than the base class does. B is a subclass that is mechanically strong on its own, or does a good job of boosting the rest of the party, but really not both. It may also land here because it is strong in certain campaigns, but not in others, or because it doesn't do a good job of leading into what the class is really best at, but is still solid. C is a subclass that lands here because it is not particularly strong in any campaign, or at least no better than like the base class without a subclass. It might not take advantage of the specialty of the class particularly well, or doesn't succeed in any pillar of play besides combat, and even that is just kind of mid. D is a subclass you just might want to avoid. It may actually detract from the base class in some way, or it has features that act as bait that sound really good on paper, but when you go to actually use them, they're either really difficult to use or just hardly ever come up. Alright, well, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the subclasses or paradoxes of the Witchwarper. With the Witchwarper, we have 4 paradoxes or subclasses to rank. These are the Analyst, the Anomaly, the Gap-Influenced, and the Precog. But before we can talk about any of them individually, we should talk about what you get from a paradox. Each paradox is going to give us a specific set of things. The first is a spell tradition, either arcane or occult. It does vary between them. Then you get a trained skill. And of course, if you're already trained in that, you can choose a different skill to be trained in. Then you get spells added to your repertoire for free by choosing this subclass. So because you have a repertoire, you're going to be adding to them every time that you're gaining new spell slots. But these are the ones that just get added on and can't be unlearned, can't be swapped. You are stuck with these ones, but they're also just on top of. They're not taking away from your choices. Next, we have an initial focus spell you get at level 1, as well as 2 more focus spells you can pick up at levels 8 and 10 by taking the related feats. Also, you get a certain way that your quantum field is affected. So everybody creates a quantum field, but the basic effect of your quantum field is decided on by your paradox. And it also acts as a prereq for a single second level reaction feat, but I'm not going to worry too much about those here. Just keep in mind it may come up in the future that they may act as prereqs for other feats. By the way, for the spells that are added to the repertoire from the subclasses, I'm not going to dive in and explain all the spells in here. What I am going to do, though, is I'm going to point out spells that you otherwise wouldn't be able to take with this subclass at least, because they're not on the spell traditions list that you get for being this subclass, and so this is kind of things that you couldn't normally take added into your repertoire, which makes them a little more interesting. With the Analyst, we get the Arcane Spell Tradition. You're going to get Computers as a skill. I know I haven't dove into this, but obviously it's very setting dependent. The repertoire spells that are added to your list that you normally couldn't get are, at rank 2, there is Sift the Sphere, as this is normally just Divine and Occult, or Subjective Reality, which is only Occult. So while other Witchwarpers could get these, you couldn't normally. And then at rank 3, there's Hypercognition, which is also Occult. So a few extras that you couldn't get. Then we have our warp spells. These are our focus spells. You've got your initial, which is warp probability. This is, of course, at level 1. It's a reaction. When you fail an attack roll or saving throw, you can choose to re-roll it and take the better result. The advanced, which I believe you can get at level 8, is alternate outcome. This is a level 4 spell. It is a reaction, and You choose a creature in your field that's making a save, and they succeeded the save, but didn't critically succeed whatever save this was. You can force the creature to re-roll the save and take the worst result. So you can help make some horrible effect take effect on them, which is actually quite nice. And the greater, which you can take, I believe at level 10, is Quantum Analysis. This is a rank 6, 1 action spell. It can be sustained up to 1 minute. Creatures you target while active get no AC bonus from cover, or from being concealed, hidden, or behind cover. You can target creatures in your field even if you can't see them. Remember, targeting means you have to be like targeting, going after their AC basically. You even get to roll twice and take the better result the first time you target a creature after casting this spell with a targeted effect that's in your field. So a little extra bonus on top of all the other things going on here. So what does your quantum field do? As an analyst, when you seek or recall knowledge in your field, you get to actually use this against 2 creatures of the similar type, so 2 creatures, 2 traps, whatever, and every time you sustain your field, whether it's directly sustaining it or through a feat that lets you sustain it, you get to recall knowledge against a creature in your field or trap or whatever as a free action. Alright, so how does that break down then as a subclass goes ranking-wise? Well, first of all, Arcane versus Occult is kind of a wash. They're both very control-focused. One might do a little more damage. There might be better spells at certain levels here or there, but I'd say they're pretty even as far as what they offer you. So I'm not going to worry about ranking based on whether you're Occult or Arcane. Computers, I haven't fully evaluated as a skill, and I mentioned that, but there are some solid trained and untrained actions here associated with it. Again, I'm not going to lean much into the skill and how good that is for you, because you can take a lot of skills. If you really want one of these skills, just take it. So, probably not the biggest deal here. However, then we have all the focus spells we get. So getting to reroll a failed save for a focus point as a reaction is pretty strong. You get focus spells back generally between combat, so you can use this probably every combat if you really wanted to. Saves can be crippling, so you want to use this when you're going to be, who knows, controlled or stunned to, or something terrible like that, right? This is how you keep yourself from ending up in a really bad place. Also, forcing an enemy to reroll a save and take the worst effect can be crippling to them. If you target the right enemy and there was, some like large AoE effect, or even a single target save or suck kind of thing, meaning it's got way worse effects on a critical fail, you want to try to force them as bad as you can get them to go. So this can be really helpful for those types of things. These are both good ways, I think, to use focus spells that lean into what the class is good at, which is control. Unfortunately, the Greater Warp spell I don't think is as good. It sounds amazing, right? You keep this going, and now you can just make sure you're able to target creatures well with your attacks and your spell attack rolls. The problem is, you're not a martial, and your spell attacks, well, there just aren't very many high-level attack spells. So the chance of you wanting to lean into attack spells seems pretty minor, and if you're not doing that, you're not gaining a lot out of this ability. So this focus spell, I think, doesn't do as much as you're hoping it's going to do. Plus, on top of that, you have to sustain it, which doesn't sound bad, but considering you're also sustaining a field, that's a lot of sustaining to do. This is just, it's difficult to take full advantage of. So I don't love that, but the first 2 focus spells I think are really solid. Then we've got our quantum field. Is it the most powerful quantum field effect? No, but I do think people underrate how good recalling knowledge really is. Seeking can also be really valuable, but I think the recall knowledge here is great. If it was just, though, getting to recall knowledge against 2 creatures once, okay. This is free recall knowledge, and when you recall, you get to do it against 2. That's a big deal. You get to gain a lot of knowledge when you're just doing something you want to do anyway, which is sustaining your field. Either whether it's sustain or using an action that's going to sustain it for you, this is just extra knowledge. This is really valuable as a team player, which of course you are. And it can help you decide what kind of spells you even want to use. So don't think this is weak. If you aren't using recall knowledge, use recall knowledge. Free recall knowledge is amazing. And then we look at the spells that are added. It's not a lot, but they're low level, which I like, because if you're going to add spells to my list that I normally couldn't get, I want to be able to use them often if I'm going to take them. So I want them to be lower level. If the only one I get is an 8th level spell, well, I may never even get there. 2nd and 3rd level spells, yeah, I'm probably getting there. So that's nice as well. I don't think any of the spells are mind-blowing, but I think they're good. And all that put together, we've got a really solid package here that I think is an A. And I would go as an int, personally. I would go int all the way to really boost up your recall knowledge. Sure, that'll also help you lean into skills and stuff, but the recall knowledge here is valuable. The focus spells here, I think, are great. all that put together, yeah, solid subclass. I love it. Next, we have Anomaly. This is also Arcane Spell Tradition. This time you gain Deception as a skill. We have 4 spells that aren't normally on the Arcane spell list here. So we've got Void Whispers, which is Divine and Occult at 3rd rank. 4th rank, we get Eldritch Wrath, which is Divine and Occult again. At 7th rank, we get Death Sentence, which is Divine and Primal. And at 9th, we get Call Cosmos, which is Divine and Primal. That's 4 spells we normally don't get on the Arcane list added to our spells here. Then we have our Warp spells. For the initial, we have Warp Terrain. This is 1 action. Either you make your entire quantum field a difficult terrain for as long as you sustain it, or you can take whatever difficult terrain's in there, even greater difficult, and turn it into normal terrain. Unless it's there for magically, like a spell created it, in which case you can get to counteract that magic, attempt it. When you upcast this, though, it does have better effects, so if they're upcasting at higher levels, you could fill your whole area with fog, or you can eventually turn it into greater difficult terrain. Then we have our advanced focus spell. This is Warp World. This is 2 actions. It's a 10-foot burst you create within your field, and all creatures have to make a Fortitude saving throw. Then they're going to be saving against, well, something off of a table. So you've got a 6-option table. You're going to roll a d6 to see which effect happens. Now, these effects do have something in common. All of them are going to cause 4d12 damage of some type. So you're always doing some kind of damage. Some of them also do 1d6 persistent damage of a type. And all of them have some sort of control element to their crit fail effect. So even though it varies, there's interesting stuff in here. It's a very fun focus spell. The greater is Parallel Forms. This is 2 actions. It can be sustained up to a minute. You create a clone of yourself. Each of you acts separately and can take actions. On the turn you cast it, you get a bonus where you can like both move and do a lot, all with just the couple of actions you use to cast the spell, which is nice, and you don't even affect each other. There's multiple attack penalty. So that first turn, it's really solid. After that, you're sharing the total number of actions you get per turn. However, any damage taken by one of you is taken by both of you, if you will. So there's only 1 health pool, essentially, for the both of you together. And this, of course, ends the clone's gone if you end up at 0 hit points. Your quantum field effect is when an enemy in your field uses a concentrate action, it's disrupted unless it succeeds at a DC 5 flat check. If it does ever fail, though, it'll be immune to this for 24 hours, so it can only fail once while being in your field. Deception is a solid skill, and it plays nicely with Charisma, so keep that in mind. But again, it's not getting a lot for that, because you can just take Deception anyway. This does have more spells added to your repertoire than we saw with Analyst. 4 is actually a pretty good number to add that aren't normally on your spell list, so that's nice. They vary between lower and higher levels. 3 and 4 are good. You're likely to run into 3rd and 4th level spells. Those higher ones, 7 and 9, you might get to them, you might not. And they're not bad. They're okay. There's some decent spells going on there. So don't discount them. There are some cool spells added here. Looking at our focus spells, I would like the initial one more. I like it. So don't get me wrong. Turning your whole field, which is a good size, into difficult terrain is going to hamper your enemies quite a bit. But I don't like it as much, only because there is a 1st level feat, an anchoring feat, mind you, that can cause difficult terrain in your field. So while this obviously gets better than just difficult terrain, and it can normalize difficult terrain if that's what your allies are dealing with, the fact that you can replicate its kind of base effect that you're stuck with for a while with a 1st level feat means I just don't think it's as good as it could be. But it's still good. As far as your advanced spell, it's not the most powerful by any stretch, right? You're doing 4d12 damage plus possibly little other damage, and crit fails. They might be, controlled in some way. The semi-randomness does take away from it because you might want to do certain types of damage, so that's a problem. It hits an okay size area, but not huge, not like the whole field, but you'll hit multiple creatures. It's very, very fun, just not that powerful. And then we have the greater focus spell, which once again isn't blowing me away. This time it seems to think that you want to cast it and then kind of go martial. Like the whole idea is you can get in there and start doing strikes with both of your clones, but you're not martial. And then the fact that either version of you can take damage, reducing your total, which means you'll just be dropped faster. I don't think I'd ever use it, honestly. I don't like it. I like the concept of it, but the execution is not fantastic. And then we get the Quantum Field bonus, which is solid given how many feats and spells are included there. The DC5 flat check is easy enough to pass, but creatures will fail it, right? It's definitely going to happen. It's a 20% chance to fail, so don't ignore that. And it's going to be spellcasters are going to have a really hard time because concentrate happens a lot with what they're doing. What makes it worse in my mind than what we got with the Analyst, though, is you can't actively take advantage of it, right? You've got this effect going on, but if no enemy creature in there is ever using a concentrate effect, and spoilers, there's lots of creatures that don't have any, it does nothing. And that's frustrating, that it just does nothing. So with the focus spells not being the most powerful, all the way down to being kind of like luster, and with the spells, you've got some nice ones added to your repertoire, but then this kind of passive, sometimes useless effect in your field. I don't dislike it. I think it's still a good, solid collection of aspects, and I think in the right campaign, I think it's very good. I think it's a B. I just don't think it's as easy to take advantage of all of its bits and pieces as the Analyst was. Next up, we have the Gap Influenced. This is the Occult Tradition. You get Society with it as a skill. The only spell added here that isn't available to the Occult spell list is Instant Virus, which is a second rank spell, and it is only arcane normally. As far as your warp spells go, you start with Warp Presence. This is a reaction spell. When an enemy targets your AC within 120 feet of you, so pretty much from anywhere, you force a will save on the attacker. Even on a success, you are concealed to that attack, and any attack that creature makes at you for 1 round. If they fail, then they're automatically going to miss. You become undetected to the creature for a round, and the undetected only ends if you do a hostile action. On a crit fail, the attack misses, you're undetected to that creature for 1 minute or until you use a hostile action. So if you really just need to get away and hide, let them try to attack you. Remember, this even counts melee enemies. They can take a swing at you, and you can just vanish in front of their eyes, and they're like, oh. And that's helpful. The advanced focus spell is Forget. This is 2 actions, lasts 10 minutes, and has a range of 30 feet. You choose 1 creature in your field that all other creatures are going to forget. It becomes undetected to all creatures while becoming invisible. So it's this invisible, undetected creature to everybody else. The first time an enemy attempts to locate, meaning seek for it, or use recall knowledge about it, this is the disappeared creature, that creature has to take 8d8 mental damage with a basic will save, and on a crit fail is also going to be confused for a round. So if you've got creatures that you know are going to try to seek, then this could be a great setup to really hurt them a lot. And finally, we have Reality Wipe. This is 2 actions. You attempt to counteract any spell effect happening in your field, even if it's on a creature in the field, so the creature has a buff on it, you can try to counteract that. However, this counteracts only what's going on in the field itself, so if there's like an overlap and part of your field's in there, part of it's not, it's only going to counteract what's going on in your field. Creatures in your field then take 8d6 spirit damage with a basic will save, and on a crit field are stupefied 2 for 1 minute. The quantum field effect is you are concealed from creatures in your field. However, if they hit you with an attack, then you aren't concealed to that creature again until the start of your next turn. So if they hit you once, they can keep going after you without having to worry about the DC5 flat check. Society isn't as broadly useful, I don't think, as Deception most of the time, but again, not leaning into the skill here for the value, just mentioning that. There's only 1 spell granted here that's not on the Occult spell list, so it's really not a big win for them, the fact that you're not getting anything added much. The focus spells start really strong defensively. Being able to just have an attack miss you as a reaction and then make it so that they're not even going to be able to target you anymore is fantastic, right? Because worst case scenario is somehow a creature gets up to you with just, say, a stride, and it's some big hulking creature, and you're a caster, and it's about to wallop you for 2 massive hits, and instead you take no hits at all. I would definitely use my focus point for this effect. Forget's a weird one. The invisibility plus undetective stuff alone really is good. So that already is pretty much worth it if you've got an ally who doesn't want to be noticed, that wants to be go undetected for a bit. The chance that somebody's actually going to go searching for them, though, an enemy creature, it has to be a pretty smart creature to go hunting for them and not have a better target to go after or whatever. So I don't know that you'd get the damage out of it. Not that you need to, but I don't know that you will. And then we've got the Greater Focus spell. I don't love this one either. Counteracting is a mixed bag. First of all, effects have to even be going on in there for you to have any reason to do it. And then your counteract could just go poorly. Now, you are still doing damage, so it's not wasted. So even if there's nothing to counteract, you could just use it and say, all enemies in the field, boom, you're going to have to take some damage. And that's not bad. Like, that's a good thing to do, and that might be the ideal choice. So it's much better than the last 2 greater focus spells, in my opinion, especially because you don't have to sustain it, because, oh boy, that's rough when you're already having to sustain your field every time. The quantum field effect, I like. So I like that you are concealed and it's forcing this flat check. I don't love that after you've been hit, it goes away, but at least then they've got math going on, so that's nice. It'll kind of force creatures to come out if they really want to target you, which, again, you're sustaining the field, you should make it hard for them to want to take you out, which is solid. It won't help against save effects, though, of course. That has to be something going after your AC for the concealed to really matter here. So there's that. So a combination of you've got some focus spells I like with ones I don't like as much, but they're generally good. You don't get much though from your spell repertoire added, and the effect you get for your field is good. It's just not amazing, and it only helps you out really in there, right? So I still think this is a B. It's closer to an A than we had with Anomaly, but I still don't think it's as good as the Analyst. And I just couldn't quite get it up to that A space. But I could see an argument if somebody had one. And finally, we have the Precog. This is the Occult Spell Tradition. You get Piloting as a skill, which is fairly circumstantial, I would guess. Spells added that aren't normally on the Occult list. At 1st rank, we have Fleet Step, which is Arcane and Primal. And at 8th rank, we have Moment of Renewal, which is Divine and Primal. As far as your Warp spells, you've got Warp Time. This is 1 action. You either gain 10 temporary hit points for 1 minute, or you force a Fortitude save against 1 enemy in your field, dealing a d10 and enfeebling them on a fail or a crit fail, and with greater enfeebling obviously on a crit fail. The damage then goes up by 1d10 and HP up by 5, but it's every 2 spell ranks, so at levels 5, 9, and so forth. Then we have the Advanced spell, which is Accelerate. This is 2 actions. This is for 1 minute, so it just goes for 1 minute. You gain Quickened and can use the extra action to strike, stride, or step. So Quickened for 1 minute. And finally, our greater is Time Loop. This is 2 actions. You target up to 5 creatures in your field to make a will save. On a crit success, nothing happens. On a success alone, they're stunned 1. On a fail, they are stunned 2. And on a crit fail, they are stunned 3 and slowed 1 for 1 minute. Your quantum field effect is that enemies in there are going to get a -5 circumstance penalty to their speeds, and allies get a +5 circumstance bonus to their speeds when in the field. Okay, so piloting's interesting, sure, but it's going to vary in value. Again, that's not really playing with the rankings. There's only the 2 spells available here that aren't normally with occult casters. Getting one at 1st rank is actually really nice, right? Start of the game, boom, you already have one you wouldn't normally have. So, great, and it's actually a good self-preservation spell. The 8th rank is very high level, so I don't know that you should expect to ever get value out of it, but it is good for an 8th rank spell, at least in my opinion. The focused spells here are really valuable, though. The damage for the initial spell and the condition really aren't anything to write home about. 1d10 is fine at 1st rank, but they should have given it damage every rank. Anyway, so 1d10 is okay at 1st. Enfeebled isn't going to matter a ton of the time. However, 10 temporary hit points at level 1 is nuts, right? You have 8 by default as a Witchwarper. Let's say you gain, I don't know, an average 6 from your ancestry. Okay, so you're at 14, and maybe you've got a +1 in con, so you have 15, and you can give yourself 10. Pretty much every combat. Yep, that's pretty solid. A lot of times we see temporary hit points added, it's half your level, or twice the spell rank, or things like this. This is just 10. It's just a lot of temp HP. Don't underestimate how good that is. And yes, the scaling's not amazing, but at level 9, it's still 20 hit points. And even 20 hit points at level 9 probably isn't going to feel bad. That's, again, you've got allies who might be getting half their level for a round for some sort of resource, and you're getting 20 for a minute. Making yourself quickened is also really good, but specifically because Stride is in there. So we've got Witchwarper, which spellcasters are already starved for actions. Most of your spells are 2 actions, and then maybe you've got 1 action to do something else with. However, you have less than that with the Witchwarper because you are going to probably use a lot of 2-action spells, but then you also have to do something to sustain your field. So it's hard to move. Giving yourself a free stride every single turn to reposition is way bigger deal than it should be, but it's really, really solid. This might be your best way to start off combat, is just give yourself that movement and do something cool with your field. And finally, for once, I actually truly like the Greater Focus spell. This is a fantastic control spell, and you are a controller. That's really what this class does. Assuming you can even, say, target 4 creatures in your field, which I don't think is crazy because the field's a decent size. As long as you're setting it up well, I think you can probably get 4 in there. Okay, let's say that you're targeting them and the average outcomes are success and fail most of the time. Let's say 2 fail and 2 succeed out of those 4. You've removed 6 enemy actions for the cost of 2 of yours. And that's kind of an average result. If anything crit fails, just 1 alone was worth it. But this is good even if you can just get a few taken away. That does so much to help out your allies. And then, on top of that, you've got the ability to slow them down just by having your field reduce their movement speed, which, again, doesn't sound like much. It can be really good, because if you can combine any sort of thing, I mentioned that first level feat that lets you make difficult terrain, moving their speed down by 5 and then causing difficult terrain might really hamper them. They might get hardly anywhere, and then you've got control going on, allowing other teammates to control. I love focus spells that allow you to really lean into control. I love when passive effects can control. When control is your thing, you want to be really good at control. This is the controlling controller, as far as I'm concerned. And that's why they get an A as far as the subclass goes. I don't think it's S tier, but I think it is the strongest A we have. So the Precog comes out of this looking real good. With that, you can see we do have 4 solid subclasses, though. Nothing's bad. We've got A's and B's. There's nothing that falls behind. I don't see how you could feel like you made a bad choice, honestly. And if you've looked at the ranking, you know that I'm happy to rank things pretty poorly sometimes. So I think you've got 4 really good choices here. I do think the Precog, though, is going to be the strongest, with the Analyst pretty close behind it. But in any case, you're not going to be upset. What do you think? Is there a paradox that you like best? Did I overrate the Precog? Let me know in the comments, and as always, adventure on.